My mom thought she could replace my father and make me call her creepy new boyfriend Dad, but she didn't realize I still had contact with him. I was 13 when my mother got engaged to Brandon. Dad had been convicted for manslaughter 5 months ago. He called someone at the bar, but he wasn't even drinking. I was there with him. He went into the bathroom, then came out minutes later looking panicked and covered in blood. He shouted for someone to call the police, and they arrived quickly, but then without saying much, they put him in handcuffs and took him away. The next time I saw him was behind bars. It never made much sense though. Dad never had a violent bone in his body. He swore he didn't do it. And the way Mom acted after his conviction made me even more suspicious. She brought home Brandon instantly. On day 1, she said he was my new dad since the other one was clearly a monster, and told me that my dad was a killer who I needed to distance from for my own safety. I wasn't sure what to believe at first, but when 5 months later my mom announced to me that they were engaged and I needed to start calling Brandon Daddy, I became quite convinced of Dad's innocence. Around this time is also when it started. Brandon got comfortable. He began staring at me while eating slowly, saying things like, "You're growing up so fast, becoming such a pretty young woman." The worst part was my mom thought it was sweet. Even when I told my mom for the first time that Brandon made my skin crawl, she told me I was dramatic. She must have told him what I said though, because that night while she slept, Brandon came into my room and he grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave marks and said, "You know what happens to naughty girls who snitch?" I was terrified, but I knew I couldn't trust my mom by telling her, so I kept it a secret. I also started keeping a different secret around this time. I started writing letters to Dad. I'd hide them between my textbook pages and mail them from my friend's house after school. Dad would write back through the prison email system to an account I created without Mom knowing. Things got really bad one specific Thursday though. I came home from school one day to find out Mom had changed my last name on all school records to Brandon's without telling me. "You'll thank me when you're older," she said. That night, Brandon came into my room to celebrate being a real family now and sat on my bed. He put his hand on my thigh and said I should be grateful to have a dad who cares. I pushed him off and locked myself in the bathroom until he left. I remember writing to Dad about that incident. The letter I got back from him was on real paper this time, and parts of it were damp and see-through, almost as if he had cried while writing it. That almost broke me. But luckily, there was one thing I looked forward to, the chance to see him. His birthday was coming up, and I remember enthusiastically asking Mom if I could visit him. I told her I knew she didn't like him, but it was his birthday. "Just today, and for a few minutes, please," I said. But of course I got told no. Actually, I got told something even worse. Mom said we couldn't go because that exact weekend Brandon coincidentally had car show tickets and expected us all to go together. He specifically requested us to have adjoining hotel rooms. When I told them I'd rather visit Dad, Mom exploded. "He's a killer. You're not visiting a murderer." When I said, "He's innocent and he's still my dad," Brandon backhanded me across the face while Mom watched. She said nothing. I was forced to go with them that weekend, and while I was sleeping, the worst happened. Brandon snuck in, he was drunk, and this time he didn't restrain himself to just a thigh grab. His hand went all the way. I had never felt so disgusting and humiliated. I remember traveling home broken. And to make matters even worse, the week we came home, my mom found the hidden letters from Dad I had been hiding. She burned them in the backyard, and as punishment for communicating with him, she took my bedroom door off its hinges for monitoring. Of course, Brandon took this as an opportunity. He would stand in the doorway at night watching me sleep. I remember that was a real breaking point of mine. I remember sneaking off into the school library past hours the next day to email DDA. I must have sent an hour-long email that made no sense because I just rambled about everything. I didn't know what I expected, if I even wanted anything because I was so numb, but then 2 weeks later, I got a reply from him. It was lengthy, super lengthy, telling me all the right things and how everything was going to be okay. But there was one thing that stuck out. "Did you check where I said?" I became confused. Check where? I started going through every single email he had ever sent me, and that's when I found it. In one of the more recent emails, Dad had told me to go up to the attic and behind the radiator. I remember reading that email the day after asking my mom if I could go visit him. I think I was too heartbroken to read thoroughly, and somehow missed it. Either way, I made a big-time mental note of what Dad said, and waited until Mom and Brandon went on date night. That happened next week. My hands shook climbing into the attic with a flashlight, and behind the radiator, I found a plastic-wrapped journal. I opened it to the marked page Dad told me to. It was dated weeks before Dad's arrest, and in Dad's handwriting it said, "It's been a few weeks since I caught Lauren and Brandon sneaking off into the bar. I don't know how to confront her." I was shocked, taken aback, and that's when I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway that made my blood run cold. They were back early. Full story linked below.